I couldn't believe the pace. I couldn't believe the drive. It's just like on any, no other place on earth. It's Monaco on steroids. Uh, the wealth was just phenomenal.
Gary Hunt, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on. We first met at your awesome, rebranding of the Kingsleaf, now about to be the Parlor. Really interesting spot. You're one of the more interesting guys I met in Charleston. You've worked all over the world. Specifically, you spent about 20 years in Hong Kong. Some really cool stories from there. And I remember we were having a conversation about theology, and you'd kind of chimed in about Bishop Barron and beauty and aesthetic and how it changes behavior. And, you've really created this special spot in Charleston that's really complimentary of, I think, the best things that are going on in cigar culture. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I remember that too. It was a cool time for me because I was sort of all alone in that approach in taking my interpretation of Charleston and, putting it out there for the local population. Because when designing the shop, it was more for locals. Build a place where locals go, tourists will want to go. Build a place that tourists go, none of the locals will want to go.
Absolutely.
So when I heard you and talking about that, it was very encouraging for me at that point in time, and I really, really do appreciate, just the whole. Now here we are, a year and a half later, and I couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. I mean, I've met so many cool people. I've met like 3 of my closest friends at that cigar bar specifically, and what was that? 2 years ago or a year and a half ago?
That was about a year and a half ago, and I was surprised. We get a lot of priests, pastors, reverends, whatever you want to call them, and actually there's a club there now called the Holy Smokes, which you've probably seen.
Yeah.
Father Michael. And anyway, we're talking, and one of the goals of that establishment was to make it so that people could have intellectual conversation. And when I heard y'all talking about that, I was so thrilled because this was one of the things that I wanted. Most of the cigar lounges, or they're really bars, are really sports bars. They're not exactly going to be talking about the 3 Transcendentals and Emmanuel Kant.
Yeah.
And there you guys were.
Yeah.
I mean, in essence, you were talking about that sort of stuff, and I thought, wow, it actually gave me a real cool glimmer of hope that, keep going on this, because I think there's a need, and if the right soil is there, you're going to get the right people in for this, and people will love it. And that's why I almost like a little kid. I was like, yay, this is what I wanted. This is really what I wanted. And I had to butt in, and I don't know if it was inappropriate at the time, but I thought it was.
No, I loved it. I think the first conversation we had was because the aesthetic was so wonderful in there. We were talking about how beauty and a proper aesthetic can change people's behavior, which Bishop Barron's really been getting into a lot lately.
Right. Yeah, he has a little 8-minute video called "Evangelizing with Beauty," and of course he's talking about for the faith, but it's really actually. Can use that. Evangelizing is selling. That's what they call brand evangelist, brand ambassador. You can use those same principles with whatever it is you're trying, whatever idea you're trying to get across. And I thought, it was such a game changer, that 8-minute video for me. Not because I didn't believe it, because it confirmed all these things that were in my head, and it codified an approach. And then when I was able to codify that approach of understanding how my environment, or how the environment sends a message, always, whether you think so or not, but when you're aware of it, then it's much more powerful. And so that really helped me in what I would say is now my career of retail design.
100%. I think we're in such a great city to do that. I mean, when I was drawn to Charleston, it was kind of almost slightly impulsive, but the architecture was one of the things that got me to stay. I left kind of mid-COVID from Colorado, and it was just a mess, the city was not being managed well. It's kind of the opposite of beauty, right? Like
Right.
they're not managing the homelessness, the crime problem, the cleanliness, government overreach. So I was like, I wanted to be in a more traditional state, and I was up in Montana and Idaho a little bit before this, which are beautiful states, great natural beauty. There wasn't enough going on kind of in an urban center. And I'd lived in Columbia prior to this, so I decided to come down here,
Right.
pop around for a little bit. But really, the old architecture, the beauty of the city, the cleanliness, the charm was really what kept me here.
Right.
You know, and that just drew me in. I think it's awesome to see like the type of establishment that you're building here really is a great statement on it. It adds to the culture of what's already here, the charm, the aesthetic, the sophistication. And I'm hoping that you're seeing a lot of businesses capitalize on that
Yes.
and become a positive part of the culture. I'm hoping more people will start to do that in Charleston,
Right.
you know, and be a part of what the city's kind of traditionally been about,
Exactly.
rather than, you know, there's some people that are trying to bring Miami or New York to Charleston, not for the better,
Right.
but with some of these kind of cheesy nightclubs or,
Right.
you know, Tulum type concepts and stuff. And I think that people are hungry for beauty. They're hungry for sophistication
Yes.
and
And
you know,
elegance.
Elegance, yeah.
Yeah, and those folks are working against the DNA of the city.
Yeah.
And so call it a little bit of feng shui or whatever you want. It's important to work with the aesthetic of the city, with the feel of the city, and you know, basically get in the flow of it. And so that's essentially what we're doing, is tapping into what my perception, what drew me to the city, and presenting it back almost as a gift. I mean, may sound a little bit high and mighty, but it is. It's a thank you to the city, and say, Brian always tells everybody, oh, it's a labor of love. It's been a labor of love. He's absolutely right. It's a love of the city, and what it was and what it is. And that was the thing. It was amazing. I have a book in the shop, and it's called Charlestonians Abroad, 1740 to 1860. And what a lot of people don't know about this history is that in that period of time, the Low Country sent more than 50% of the people that went to Europe and universities came out of the Low Country.
Really?
It's an astonishing fact. And so before I moved here, I did a lot of research about the city, the history, good and bad, and I was just astonished. Most people don't know, say, that Newport, Rhode Island was originally put on the map by Southern plantation owners down here.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. And so in many ways, Charleston was a cultural, for architecture and things like that, a cultural watershed for the colonies. Yes, and so I was like, how is this not known, and how in a little way can we make it known?
It feels like a European city. I mean, I've had a couple friends. One of my good friends I played rugby with growing up came out for my 30th, and I've got another British buddy we had on the podcast the other day. It feels like a European city, especially with the zoning stuff, where in most of the parts of the city, none of the buildings are allowed to be higher than the churches, and it creates like a beautiful aesthetic where you don't feel overwhelmed by these high rises and stuff.
Right.
Love it.
Yes, I do too. I mean, that's my understanding is, especially when you get around Calhoun, the city is one of the most regulated outside of Rome.
So actually, Nantucket and Charleston have very similar zoning, zoning. I don't know what you call them, regulations or laws or whatever. They're designed off each other, those regulations. Right. So similarly, Nantucket was one of the wealthiest. When the whaling industry was in full haul, that's where the oil was coming from. That was one of the wealthiest pockets in America.
Yeah.
And then it kind of tapered off, similar to how Charleston did. It went from one of the wealthiest cities in America to one of the poorest cities in America after the Civil War. And, you had all these old buildings, this beautiful old aesthetic that were maintained by people that had vision to preserve that. So I guess there's a lot of back and forth with the zoning stuff. And
so
both
Charleston,
those areas.
up until the Civil War, was the wealthiest city. Charleston,
wealthiest in the Western Hemisphere at one point.
yes, and
The golden age of sail.
exactly, and contributed 29% of the GDP of the nation.
Really?
Yes, and up until that time, contributed 75% of the excise taxes for the federal government, because that's how it was run.
Was it mainly agriculture, like
Yes,
from
it
like
was,
the heads of the agricultural
it was
economy?
indigo, it was rice, it was cotton. Cotton not as much, but it was rice and indigo that, and this part of the Low Country that really gave it its zoom.
Yeah.
In terms, yeah. But just think about that. 75% of the federal government was being funded, or at least the excise tax portion of how they get their funds, their funding, came out of an area that's not that large, and so it really punched way above its geographical size.
I forget if it's in the last year, last couple years, they're saying $3 billion in incomes are moved into the Charleston metro area.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it. I mean, in all the studies that I did before I moved here, or just looking at 90 different vantage points of moving here. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw, and so for me, Hong Kong's a luxury city. So when I saw plans for standalone LVs or Gucci's and that sort of stuff, they've already done the market research for you. So in Hong Kong, you've got to, when they do it, you know where you can go, you know where it's safe, because they're not going to dump a ton of money on a flagship shop without, one would think
Doing their
without-
homework on the
without
market
doing
and
their
stuff.
homework. So once I started to see that, and now there's just made public, I believe, that Four Seasons will come here, and so these sort of brands are going to lift the city in a good way and reinforce it. It's going to become a very Tony place, in my opinion.
I think you're right, and I think that with smart development, people embracing the character and aesthetic of the city, it's going to be a really special place.
Yes. Yeah.
You
I
look
think
at
so.
you look at I think the future almost is in some of these kind of mid-sized, smaller cities right now that have been having good policy on law enforcement, smart development, bringing in the right people, creating the right systems that work.
Right.
Where a lot of these conventional cities, even Denver's seen a lot of growth for the last 10 years, but
Right.
it's continuing to grow economically, but it's extremely expensive. It's dirty, a lot of crime, mismanagement of the migration stuff there. It's a sanctuary city. And there's a lot of places that people are fleeing,
Right.
some of these conventional cities, New York, LA,
Right.
San Francisco and stuff. And I'm meeting a lot of people that are coming here from some of those
Sure.
places that would shock you. I mean,
Yeah.
with the remote working too, people are able to operate kind of in a hybrid status from places like here. So it's very interesting.
I think the thing, if you want to know what people want, look what they tried to take away: community interaction. And so people want that on a more intimate scale. I mean, like what we're doing is a microcosm of, I think, what people want.
Yeah.
Of course, we're doing it at a pricier level per se, but I think it's that sort of need is demographic. It's democratic in the sense that everybody needs that, and so you're starting to see people with the ability to work remotely move to the city that they really want to move to, so they can have that little more of an, I wouldn't say a Mayberry RFD kind of ideal, but they want to know who their neighbors are. They want that, and so it's tailored. This kind of city is tailor made for that.
Getting back to the concept that you guys are working on, you're rebranding the name to the Parlor,
Yes, the parlor.
which I love.
Right.
I've seen similar concepts to that in cities like New York. Denver has the Brown Palace has kind of a sophisticated cigar bar like that, and I've seen them in Paris and Munich as well.
Right.
Are there any European cities or Hong Kong places that have that level of sophistication in the cigar community
Sure.
that you kind of want to mimic?
The two big ones, accepting individual shops in areas like perhaps Greece or Athens. There's some cool shops. Germany, of course, Switzerland, France, London, Hong Kong, and London are the cigar capitals of the world. I mean, what you see down there, which is I've been told, you don't see too many of them outside, being compared to the places in New York where they have the Sinatra night, even Macanudo room, which I'm shocked. I mean, I think it's nice. I think it's high praise. But what my patrons are saying is the level of intimacy, the level of service is actually better. And so this is sort of what you want. Over in Hong Kong, that would be the minimum standard, the absolute minimum standard. Uh, in London, it would be, I would say, yeah, about the minimum standard too. London's a little bit different because there's a prohibition. There's not too many places where you can smoke publicly. You can, in some places, smoke on the patios of restaurants, but most of the clubs are in Mayfair, about a 1.5 kilometer stretch where there's like 56, 57 private clubs. And so you're not really seeing it, but if you know people that, if you've been in them, if you know people that belong to those clubs, yeah, they have that same sort of aesthetic. The difference is that most of them are in townhouses that are freestanding. They're freestanding clubs, and let's say the price points are a lot higher to get in.
So did you hop right into this as soon as you got to Charleston, or was it kind of after you'd been here for a little bit of time, figuring out the city and stuff?
Actually, about 2 months in, I did. I actually was scheduled to go back to Hong Kong for a CFO position with a fella that I used to work with, and then COVID hit, and it would be running about a $500 million company in China and some production in China, offices in Hong Kong, and sales throughout Southeast Asia. COVID hit, and that was put on hold by the board of that company. And so my wife said to me, "Why don't you just go around and see what's going on?" I went to one of the shops, and just to keep busy. And the fellow said, "Sure, I'll let you do your thing with this shop." And I did. And fortunately for me, COVID hit, and he didn't come to the shop for a year. And when he came back, he said his wife and him said, "It doesn't even look like my shop. What did you do?" In a good way. And I had transformed the look of it. I mean, I didn't move walls or anything, but cleaned it up, made it sophisticated, changed out the entire offering, the way we do things. And of course, they saw it in the numbers. The numbers were then paying for other shops, not just the
I
shop
can
that I
vouch
was
for
in.
this. The previous establishment was, shall we say, run down compared
Yeah.
to what it is now.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and so that's when Brian, the owner, we started talking, and he asked me to come on board. And the one in the parlor is the one I really wanted to do. I had been in there about a year earlier that I started working with Brian, and I said to my wife, I said, "Wow, man, I could really make this place sing." Not in a braggadocious way, but wow, this is a gem. The location, the structure.
Did you draw a lot of inspiration from what you saw at your time operating in Hong Kong when you were?
Yes, I actually drew most of the inspiration came from the service level, the crispness, we're there but we're not there, that sort of thing. That the interaction between the staff, if you get to know them, it's just like you and I, but it's not that quick, and it takes a while. But the way they did things, the perfection of how they do things, in just ultimate customer service without getting ruffled. When you don't get that many rough customers over there, because it's a different kind of feel, these kind of places. Most of the aesthetic I felt really came from a combination. I think we had mentioned in other conversations about my wife and I had a chain of organic food stores in Hong Kong. And we had one next to the Ralph Lauren flagship. And I was I got to know the general manager of that store very well. And how he designed things, how he made you feel at home, and how you walk in there and you're seeing coats and watches and boots and stuff for a lot more money that you should pay, and you're not even thinking about it when you walk out. You're thinking about the experience, the life, and so on. And that sort of taking that with the service level, and then the aesthetic of Charleston, which I love. I love that sort of English, that English feel. I think American design right now is sort of a pastiche of what the English aesthetic is.
It's gotten too utilitarian,
Yes.
right? And you look at, I spent some time in Russia and Poland, parts of the former Soviet bloc,
Right.
and you look how ugly and utilitarian
Right.
the architecture is. You get into like Bauhaus architecture and all
Right.
this stuff that was, meant to get people to behave a certain way. It's kind of soul sucking.
Yes.
Right. And I feel like we've got a kind of McDonald's
Yeah.
aesthetic that's awful, right?
Right.
You look at the new houses that are being built in some of these cities, and that's one of the special things about Charleston. Even some of the new houses have character to them here,
Right.
Right. Gary, I think this would be a good time to kind of segue into your experience in Hong Kong. You'd spent about 20 years there, and you left at a very interesting time when
Right.
there were CCP was kind of taking the land back, unfortunately, and asserting its political dominance there. What was it like in its heyday? I mean, I had a mentor who ran Morgan Stanley's operations in Hong Kong for a long time. Spoke extremely highly of his experience there, the economic freedom, the cleanliness, the
Right.
sophistication, in a similar manner that you did.
Right.
A guy I respected tremendously. Like, what was it like, kind of in its prime?
In its prime, it was New York on steroids, with a little bit more of a yes sir, no sir vibe to it. It was. I still contend today. New York, Hong Kong makes New York look like Charleston. Not so much in the pace of traffic, but that too, in the decision-making process. There's ego there, but it's a little bit suppressed. There's more in the Asian, especially in Hong Kong, there is more of a surface harmony. The minimal government approach makes people gives them the realization that I have to deal with you tomorrow. There's no stopgap to control to buttress me. So you have to really think twice about how you deal with people, even if you don't like them, how you deal with them. So the incentives there are for people to work together, accommodate, even legally, you're strongly urged to settle things out of court if should there be any issues. So it's a system that's basically moving forward. It's always moving forward because Hong Kong is always considered on borrowed time. It was always thought, even in the 1840s, when the first they're called the Hongs, the first trading houses started. They always kind of figured out at some point China's going to want this back. Hong Kong Island and the lower part of Kowloon were ceded to Britain in perpetuity in 1841. In 1898, the upper part of the Kowloon Peninsula and other islands were leased for 99 years. So that came due in 1997, and Margaret Thatcher and Deng Xiaoping sat down. Basically, Deng Xiaoping politely threatened that we can just walk in there. Margaret Thatcher said this is a crown colony where a lot of the administration's paid by Parliament, and we get all of our water. How do we from China? And they can shut it off at any time. It's just too small strategically to manage, and so they came with this agreement called One Country, Two Systems, where Hong Kong was essentially a city-state or a nation within a nation. It has its own currency, it still does, and in theory, the law is the agreement is still in place, although in reality it's not. So for 50 years it was to be Hong Kong people running Hong Kong, where they would have their own currency, their own body of law, their immigration, their own customs. They drive on their right-hand drive, like the UK. Everything's different. You have to go through border immigration and customs in both Hong Kong and China to get between the two. You need visas to get between the two, and so it is essentially like a different nation. I am what's called in Hong Kong a San Xing Yan, which means 3-star person, which means it means officially you're a citizen. You can vote, you can do all those good things. You don't need a visa to live there. I have essentially the same rights as my wife, who was born there, a Hong Kong Chinese girl. And so I don't have to be a PRC citizen to be a Hong Kong citizen. So if I was to get a Hong Kong passport, I would have to do that. But
What you were operating in the corporate world where you're there for the
Yes.
most part. What were some of the more interesting things, spaces you were operating in while you were there, and how is it different culturally, business wise, in the United States?
Oh, it's very, very different in the sense that at the time, China specifically, Hong Kong is very different than China, even now, even though they're trying to make it similar and trying to blur the lines. It's people are very professional. People are very careful with their words. It's not like here where you think you can say anything you want to your bosses or write anything in memos. That sort of stuff, in the main, doesn't really go on. It doesn't happen, yes, but no. People are pretty much straight shooters. It's very hierarchical. The beauty of that culture, though, over there, at least, is that with a low a low tax regime, so they have no capital gains, no dividends tax, no estate tax, no VAT, no gross sales tax. I can go on, but we got to eat dinner sometime.
Yeah.
And so all the incentives are there for if you create something, you keep it, and so that's what charges people here. It's funny. Yesterday I had a conversation with a developer, and we were talking about all the taxes and tax strategies, and I thought, wow, you didn't even have to think about that in Hong Kong. Your focus was on creating.
Is the
and it's
income
funny.
tax is a flat tax there?
Yes, it's a flat income, flat profits tax for your corporation, flat salaries tax. So it's funny that the one thing he said to me was, the worst thing for me would be a flat tax because it takes all the breaks away.
Yeah.
So, but he acknowledged that it would probably be better for the general populace.
What were the main industries you were operating in at the time while you were there?
So I was in electronics manufacturing. I was brought on for a New Jersey company to help clean it up for going public. I wrote the S1 document, which is that 300-page document that you submit to the exchange, and I saw that we had started to put our feelers out in China for either sourcing and or selling. The NASDAQ tanked in '98, and so the larger shareholders pulled the offering because they weren't going to get any kick from it. The valuation post the drop was the same as it was before. Years before when they started to do this. So the valuation went from like $1 billion to $200 million, which is where it was before we started the process. So I said, I like you guys, but I came on for that purpose, and I think I'm out. And so I started looking around, and they asked me if I'd go over to China and Hong Kong and take a look. And I went over there, and it's like I tell people, when I went over to Hong Kong, I found America. I couldn't believe the pace. I couldn't believe the drive. It's just like on no other place on earth. It's Monaco on steroids. The wealth was just phenomenal. But interestingly, on many of the materialistic things, it's super high up there, if not the highest, in terms of ownership of luxury brands per capita, U.S. multimillionaires or mega millionaires, but also highest use of public libraries, longest lifespan, and so on and so on. So it wasn't just this money-hungry place. It is, but it was also people that were interested in developing themselves in a lot of ways, and that's the part of it you don't see. There's a lot of cool people over there, a lot of generous people over there, a lot of people behind the scenes that they just don't make it into the headlines because, usually bad news travels a lot faster than good news, and doesn't make for good reading sometimes.
With the younger guys that are going to remember what it was like in its heyday, in regards to what's going on now, do you think a lot of them are going to be stay and fight, or they're going to go to the UK or the United States, or where do you think most of those guys are going to?
So most
go?
of them are going to be going to if they're not in jail, they're going to, and I don't say that to be funny. They're going to go to either the UK, Australia, or the US, and some of them are there. Now, if you remember in 2015, there was a young kid named Joshua Wong, and he wrote a letter to the New York Times, basically telling them, "You're doing this to us now, but at some point we're going to be older. Do you really want to do this?" So he successfully fought at the age of 15. He fought the use of the indoctrination of ultra Chinese nationalism in school books, because it was supposed to be separate, that sort of thing. Hong Kong people running Hong Kong. Not that you couldn't have pride in it, but it wasn't supposed to be officially taught. At 15 years old, he was able to coalesce the entire population of Hong Kong to figure out, no, it's probably not the right time for him. He was my next door neighbor.
Really?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate for being there. I feel like a little bit like Forrest Gump. I was able to know people that were, very influential in the major things that happened in Hong Kong. I got to know several of the people that wrote the Basic Law, which is the governing document of Hong Kong, like equivalent of our Constitution. They were customers, or I would see them at cigar lounges, or I'd see them out running every day, or, this and that. And so that's the cool thing about that city is while there are wide disparities in income, the proximity of those people that are in those wide disparities are right on top of each other, and you see them all the time.
Where do you think the people that are passionate about retaining freedom, maybe, they're playing things in the long run, they're playing a long game, they're in the UK for a little bit before things can change. Where do you see them going? Where do you see those guys that are really passionate about retaining that culture kind of conglomerating?
Well, they're going to places like the UK and the US and Canada, Australia. They understand that it's probably going to be a long time before they get back to Hong Kong, if it ever gets back. I hate to say that. If I could move back tomorrow and it was like it was, I don't know if I would, because I like my life here now, and it's a different. I'm at a different place, but I look back on that. I would, up until even very recently, somebody asked me, I'm a Hong Konger. That's what I am. It was a real part of my identity, because just the way you think. Even now, my wife calls me an egg, white on the outside, yellow on the inside. I feel like an immigrant, and I'm here 4 years. I still feel like an immigrant.
What lessons, we've seen a resurgence of lawfare, neo-Marxism, kind of cultural subversion, a lot of Maoist type tactics in some of these movements domestically throughout the West.
Right.
From open borders policy to some of the woke stuff, racial division, reapplication of Marxist principles to what are perceived as racial hierarchies and other ethnic hierarchies. Do you think that these people will be good assets in regards to helping us appreciate what we have, not only appreciate what we have, but figure out how to kind of fight back against that stuff and foretell some warnings for Westerners?
I think so. Usually I try to bite my tongue when people talk about it, especially when people talk about China. I mean, I lived it. I know it. I live right next to the governor of Hong Kong. So I not that gives you any special knowledge, but that was something I was very aware of what was going on. My wife would tell me, you knew more about Hong Kong than most people that were born there. And because whenever I went to a place, I wanted to know about it, and so that I could fit in and contribute. The message that I bring back, and I think everybody, I think, not speaking for them, but I'm sure the universal message is, if you think it can't happen here, Hong Kong was the freest place on earth for 25 straight years. Both civil liberties, in a sense of civil liberties and economic freedom. If you think that can't happen here, it happened over there.
Look at Venezuela too, right? Look at the amount of oil and wealth in Venezuela and how, where they were 30, 40 years ago to where they are now.
Right.
It's awful. And, you hear, I spent a lot of time in Miami and Palm Beach and met a fair amount of Venezuelans. And just the level of these are, high net worth people too, doctors, lawyers, whatever, that are, escaping through whatever means necessary because it's gotten so out of control there. I'm hoping Americans. Do you think most Americans are kind of oblivious to what's going on, or?
I think they care about it, but it doesn't impact them. America's America. There's you can do anything, you can go anywhere, you can do nothing if you want to, and the natural resources that we're blessed with sort of protect us from a lot of what's going on, what other people, their daily drudgery is. I mean, here, poor people are nowhere near what poor people live like in Southeast Asia or in Africa or or in Brazil or places like that are just the poverty is devastating. So I think it's a very comfortable life here, and I think the powers that be, without getting too far down the rabbit hole, I think the powers that be kind of want it that way. You soften people up, it's easier to get them because they don't want to get out of their comfort zone. So
They're playing a long game.
Yeah. So the difference with Hong Kong is a unique place in the sense that it's a comfortable place, but because it's a trading entrepot, so there's no resources except for a deep natural harbor, which is now sort of being displaced by the shipping companies up the Pearl River Delta. So it's always had to evolve. It's always changing. So it was a unique place where people that attained a lot of money really couldn't get comfortable because it was either a matter of time. There was always a wolf at the door, and that wolf could be technological change, it could be political change. So you're always sort of have one bag packed sort of thinking, and you're always on it's always that sort of Kaizen, like continuous improvement. How can I do it better? How can I do it faster? Where's the gap in the market? So that's it's always been that way, and that's sort of what drew me to the city. Is these people never stop, no matter, and it's not a matter of just amassing more money. It's their drive is to do it better, faster. How can they'll analyze how to fold a napkin to just get it to perfection, not to the degree of, say, Japan, the way they do things, and that's a compliment. But they balance that pursuit of forward progress with material well-being, gaining more knowledge, and so on and so forth. And so that it was a very unique place because it didn't have to really worry about being invaded or anything like that. Not militarily,
Gary, you've lived a lot of places. You grew up in the Northeast, operated in Hong Kong, which is a very different culture, and now you're in the Southeast in Charleston. And, one of the things when we first met that we talked about was, where it was at a time when a lot of people were moving all over the country because of failed policies and politics and stuff. What I noticed growing up in Denver was, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth out there in the last 10 years, was the type of people that were moving to the state didn't really respect the culture that made it great. They wanted to change it into something different. They didn't have reverence for what made the state once great, and it really led to its decline. Moving to Charleston, I really want to be a part of, I'm always going to be an outsider to a certain degree, but I really want to be a part of what's here, right? I want my kids to be a part of what makes this city great and, complement that. And I think you do a fantastic job of that. What are you seeing kind of in the business world in Charleston in regards to that attitude, the positives and the negatives?
So, the way I come into it is that first of all, let's dial it back. When I was in high school, just something about the South always intrigued me. I was never really in love with being in New York. I was born in New York City, lived in Morristown. These are, nice areas to live in, and they are. But just something about the culture. I don't know if it was something I saw in a movie or something I saw. I just love the at least the surface gentility of it. Now, that's not a disparaging comment. I just didn't know and I realized that there were things I didn't know about it. But what I saw, I liked, and I thought it was just a nicer way of living, to be, to be simplistic, I suppose. And when in moving back here, I knew for sure there was no way I was moving above the Mason-Dixon line. I don't care, no pun intended, for all the tea in China. I was not moving back up there. And I told my wife, we can do this, but it's either going to be South Carolina, maybe the tip of Virginia, Williamsburg, or Florida. But that's about it. If not, I'm moving back. And so when I came here, it was actually everything I thought and more. I was so shocked at how friendly people were, how genuine they were, and as long as, assuming that you didn't come in here as if, well, I know better, I'm from a big city, or I've lived here or there. People were really cool about just, they were, the warmth really drew me, and that's something that you lose in a big city, no matter how crisp the service is. So we've actually talked about this, about combining the crispness of those that experience in whatever you're developing in whatever business, with the sort of warmth and the soft touch of the South, which I think is just so unique. And specifically this area, even I have people that come into the shop all the time, or in the lounge all the time, and they will tell me they're from Texas or they're from Georgia. It's very unique here. It's a very unique vibe. Not in the shop, but in the area in general. And I think coming into this, I do not seek to change Charleston. That's silly. I don't think it's lacking anything, in the sense that it doesn't need me. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very grateful that I can see some gaps in that are not necessary to be filled, but would add like a spice, would add more flavor to it. Would add, but a complementary flavor, not something that's going to turn tacos into teriyaki. It's something that would seem natural. Oh yeah, that's how Charleston should be. And that's funny. That's most of the places, most of the people that come in will say, yeah, this feels exactly how I envisioned Charleston. Well, it's funny because I've only been here. I'm not grown up here, and it was just an interpretation, and the shops that I've done are just interpretations of my ideas of the neighborhood and the region in general and how they feel. And so I find that fish don't know they're wet. A lot of people here don't know really what they have, and I think I do. And I think I get a glimpse of it. I don't know it all. I have no desire to be part of a particular group or family, have a family history, partly because I can't. At this stage in my life, my family has moved here. I'm not going to have the 6 generations of roots to fall back on. And so I don't want what I don't have right now in that sense, and I don't think it's necessary. More from a spiritual sense, my home is elsewhere. It is not here. One of the things about what happened in Hong Kong was, I thought I was going to be buried there, so I didn't think I was going to leave, and it was hard on me to lose it, and so, but then I sort of changed my mindset, and I said, I don't have to ever go back there. I can take it with me. And so even in Charleston, when I first came here, I thought, I'll live here forever. And I probably will. It'll probably be always a base or something like that. But it's all about taking that place and internalizing it and living a life day to day, because you don't know what's going to happen. So to have these grandiose ideas of coming in and changing the culture of this or that industry is not for me. It's being effective in my neighborhood with, making sure my family respects the norms of the place that we're in. We are very adamant about manners and making sure that not that people don't know you're a foreigner, but that blending in in terms of matters of taste and matters of principle. No, you stand firm. But fortunately, here, most of the people have the same principles that we do: family, God, family, country, that sort of thing, and usually in that order. And that's what I like about it.
I love that. I'm so with you, and just seeing the way some of these people raise their kids, how respectful they are.
Right.
Some of the traditional Southerners. I moved here. I'm into my faith and patriotic guy and stuff, and I love it. I mean, it helped point out kind of some of the flaws, I feel like,
Right.
with the Rocky Mountain West and some of the attitudes out there in regards to how polite they are with their elders,
Right.
the community engagement, politeness, all that kind of stuff. It's got a charm to it that
Yes.
you don't see in a lot of other places. I think it's really special. Also, the community engagement's awesome.
Right.
The church that I attend has a Knights of Columbus chapter that is frequently coordinating with other churches to help out with the homeless stuff occasionally and stuff, and just seeing how people come together to solve some of these problems and are deeply engaged in the community is refreshing, because you really don't see that in a lot of other cities. There's not true community in some of these bigger cities where it's like everyone's just kind of out for themselves.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? I really like the community engagement.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess you can only really get in a smaller city like this.
I think so. We attend St. Andrews.
Okay.
In the
Beautiful
Old Village.
church.
It's
Yeah.
a beautiful church. It's a beautiful community, and I was the kind of guy that didn't really need to go to church. I'm not holier than anybody, but I was more of a loner in that sense. But my family did, and I needed to be a part of the community and engage. And my wife helps out where she can a lot, and we love it. We like being a part of it, and so that the intimacy of those people in that neighborhood is absolutely magical. And to me, it's kind of funny because people will come up to me that have been here a while, and they're like, wow, you go there, or you go to the traditional church. That's like ground zero for traditional Charlestonian values and so on. And so it's almost in the sense, like I said, it's like Forrest Gump. I'm sort of pinching myself. I'm saying, how can I, this is Gary. Don't tell anybody you're born in New York and let alone New Jersey, and they're having dinner with them in their homes, and they are, there's no hostility or anything like, and I know that may sound funny because I'm hostile to folks that, I don't put bumper stickers on my car, but that one that says South Carolina, we're full. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. And,
Yeah.
and I don't want to change anything. I'm not saying I don't want it to move forward and evolve naturally, but I'm not here to make myself the center. The center is the community and the shared values, and God, community, shared values, state, country, and in that order.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it, is that localism, for lack of a better word.
And I think that what you guys are doing with Once Kingsleaf now, the future is going to be the parlor, right?
Yes.
So what's so special about the operation that you guys have created is I feel like it's adjusting people's behavior. I mean, it's really inspiring in regards to how you're creating a classy establishment that has behavioral etiquette and stuff that's really creating a community that kind of rubs off on other concepts maybe in the area.
Yes.
It inspires other concepts to kind of fit with the city's values and charm and behavioral aesthetic, right? I mean,
Right.
could you elaborate more on what you're seeing with that?
So it's funny. We are seeing that. The clientele we get in is totally different now than it used to be. It's a clientele that cares about the city, that loves, what's been done there, and they love seeing the gentrification of it. To a degree, like you said, there's some
Mixed
sort
bag.
of
Yeah.
mixed bag of things, developmental wise, but I'm seeing people come in, and it's funny. I can see people change over time, where they're loud, even like, say, and I'm not trying to be funny or nasty. Say people come in from the north, Boston, New Jersey, New York. You can see them over time kind of wind down, and they're like, okay, I get it. I get it. And it goes back to that, the topic of, Father Barron saying evangelizing with beauty. Show them, what it's all about. And the funny thing is, and even Charlestonians, they sometimes you have this pearl and you never really look at it, and then somebody shines it up and says, here's this is yours, and it's been yours all along. I'm just showing you how beautiful this thing can be, and that's the fun part of it, is that is taking what my perception of all the good things of the city were, and just showing people, here you go. This is who we are.
And there's so much innovation in regards to the food and bev kind of social scene here. It's a lot of really cool stuff being done aesthetically, cool stuff with food and stuff.
Right.
I got a buddy who runs the 167 Raw.
Right.
He's also another
fabulous.
they're crushing it. They got 3 locations here with different concepts now, and there's just a lot of really cool concepts and creatively in that space right now, and the cocktail space and stuff, and it'll be interesting to see how that continues to grow and evolve in the coming years, especially with the new capital coming here as well.
I think it will continue. I think what you're going to see is, in a way, a little bit of a mini Hong Kong, in the sense that you're going to see an inverted bell curve in the market of F&B and experiential kind of places. It's either going to be all volume. There's going to be no middle guys, and then there's going to be a lot of higher end in terms of not necessarily price, but it will generally be because of rents and the people to do it and so on. That costs money, but you're going to find that you're going to have it's all going to skew towards the high experience sale or approach to things, if you want, because that's the only people that will be able to do it, and that is sort of like what Hong Kong is, because of rents, because of the high price of people. You are only going to be able to get people. So in some sense, it's not exactly super family friendly at the very high end, because meaning for the everyday person, but usually in many ways it's just like cars, the S class. It leads the way, so that those principles can trickle down to other communities, to other aspects of what happens here. And so we're not necessarily looking for, with respect to us, I don't approach it from, I'm looking for a certain moneyed set to come in. I'm looking for people that want that experience. For people that have it, it's confirmational. For people that don't, but once in a while can treat themselves, it's aspirational. So everybody's winning. And for us, hopefully the staff and I are presenting a picture of, this is just how we live. It's
a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's genuine.
It's
a
authentic.
very
I think Charleston has a remarkable opportunity over the next couple of years to create an extremely unique lifestyle. Depending on the leadership of business leaders, community leaders, and stuff, but it's such a unique lifestyle compared to any city I've ever been in. I can't think of anywhere that has.
Yeah. To me, the funny thing is, I love when I see 7 or 8 men of the cloth and of different faiths, and that is so cool. I've never seen that anywhere in the world, where you can have that, and it's funny when people walk in and they see that, they do a double take, and I think perhaps, especially if you're from the Northeast, where it's more of a priest can't do this or can't do that, or reverends can't do this, and here they're just part of the community, and I think that I love that aspect of it. And then they're talking with Jewish real estate developers and things, and it's just a cool mixing of people, and that's the beauty of what Hong Kong was, because it was outward looking. So to tie that experience to this was, you're constantly dealing with people, and you didn't really care where they came from, as long as you found something in common, and usually that commonality is your family. A good cigar, good conversation, all the things that were taken away from us.
Get into the cigars. Where are the hot? Are there new brands, or what? Is the industry kind of stagnant in regards to where this, the best tobacco is being grown right now, or the best seeds are from, or is it evolving at all?
So right now, I would say the best seeds, the best tobacco is coming out of Nicaragua. They they are really good about applying modern manufacturing techniques that apply to any industry. So where they'll properly rest the soil, they'll handle the tobacco. So the quality continues to go up. As far as Cuba, it's suffering because they're overdoing it. And again, to the rich get richer sort of thing, Hong Kong's the number one place for cigars, for Cuban cigars. So they always get the pick of the litter, and the rest of the world gets the second.
But the Nicaraguans are on par with
But the
Cubans.
Nicaraguans are on par. Yes, for Cubans, it's more the forbidden fruit. Yeah, there is a distinct flavor profile like Bordeaux wine, but there are other regions and there are other taste profiles. Some of my favorite cigars are Cubans, but I would say in the main, Nicaraguan cigars are easily the finest cigars made today.
What are your top three brands, Nicaraguan brands for high end and then middle end right now?
Oh, so I would say Padron at the highest end. These are people that they make cigars, and that's all they do is make cigars. They don't fluff themselves. They have excellent quality control, excellent consistency. I think guys like Agnor Salif, the guys that are pushing the Agnor Salif, like AJ Fernandez, that sort of thing, I think they're doing some very interesting, tasty stuff. Folks like Liga Privada, who became famous for their flavored cigars, but then just amazingly jumped up to the upper levels with respect to putting out really quality, consistent cigars. So yeah, those would be my picks right now.
What about in the mid tier? Who's the best for the middle
Right now,
price
the
range?
mid tier is probably Fuente. They're very good at the mid tier. Rocky Patel. Rocky Patel's got some excellent upper end stuff too. I don't want to forget him. He's brought a lot of some of the manufacturing techniques. He was one of the ones who pioneered that. I met him in Hong Kong once, and we didn't talk about cigars at all. We talked about yield rates, and he was telling me all about he introduced draw testing into cigars, volumetric draw testing, where they'll test flow for consistency. And that, to me, that was fascinating. I met him about 15 years ago.
Do you guys have a type of beer? Are you guys more focused on beers or spirits at the?
So we can't focus on spirits based on the way the laws are set up in terms of selling spirits and the need to have a DHEC certified kitchen and so
Food
on.
menus
So,
needed.
yes, and so we have to. We decided. I thought, I came here. What can I do? A lot of people were focusing on bourbon and gin and scotch and sipping. The idea of sipping something with your cigar, and I'm like, how can I figure out a way to make this experience closer to that and yet still very unique? And a couple of buddies hooked me up on some foreign Belgian beers, and I'm like, okay, this stuff's intense. I need to sip it, and that was the light bulb moment.
Oh, those beers you guys got there,
Yeah,
fantastic.
And so we have 7 of the 10 Trappist beers worldwide, made by monks. So for people that may not know what that means, and all the other beers are either Abbey ales that don't meet the strict requirement but are similar, and so
They're very rich, but they're
they're very
amazing
rich, but
profile.
they're smooth, and actually you can pinpoint a taste profile. You can pair a cigar much more precisely with that than you could a scotch, a whiskey, a gin.
What are your top beers that you guys are serving right now, and what would you pair them with the Padron?
Oh, okay. So the Padron, the easy one, is a Samuel Smith Organic Chocolate Stout from the UK. It's a drier stout. Padrons have a naturally cocoa kind of flavor to them coming from the leaf. And this is I think I'm batting $9.99 on this one. Everybody loves it. For a lighter stick, say something like a Davidoff, there's a beautiful beer called Valdu. It means Valley of God. So it was born as an Abbey ale, but now it's taken over by a corporate concern. But they still brew it. This is a very rare beer, so rare here that, and even in Belgium, that I had a couple guys from Belgium take a 4-pack back with them because they couldn't find it.
Wow.
And so It's super smooth, alcohol contents mid sevens. So, but creamy, long taste, long flavor profile, and with probably the other beer I really like. I mean, we've got Gulden Draak, which is the number one beer in the world. It's 100 points on every rating you could possibly find. But in terms of my profile, I think I like something like a Trappist Rochefort 8. It's a malty kind of beer, goes with a wide variety of cigars, and it's fun. And another fun beer is called Amenabre Ambrata. It's out of Italy. It's Italy's oldest beer, and apparently we are only one of two people that sell it in the region.
Really?
In terms of at establishments. And I found it at the place, at an Italian place, and I'm like, this would go great. And it's great. People, you would think I was giving people crack. I don't know what crack is like, but they love it. I mean, but I guess from their reaction, yeah, they love it. It's one of these universal beers that go with everything.
Oh, your beers have an incredibly unique profile. They're awesome. I hadn't really thought of them as sipping beers, but that makes more sense because they're you really want to take in the flavor profile on those things. They're awesome.
And we do the same with wines as well. So the funny thing is that I'm a cigar guy, but I'm not the guy that's waiting for this cigar to come out or that cigar out or has to go to Las Vegas. I'm not a beer guy. In the sense that, again, I'm looking for that. If I have it, I have it. If I don't, I don't. I'm not a wine guy. We have now our wines are at the level of Peninsula Grill, Halls. So I've been very fortunate. So getting back to like what we're doing here, what we want out of Charleston, local people see what we're doing, and they're like, yeah. It's additive, and it becomes so it's not just Gary's creation or place, or in terms of creating the look and the feel of it. It's now the communities. I'm sort of giving them back ownership to it. Like you're helping out with this too. And so it's kind of cool in that respect that they're starting to own a little piece of it, metaphorically speaking. And I really like that.
Are you guys looking at doing any events or kind of promoting any membership club type things?
We do have a private room in the back. It's just for 12 members, and we want to give it very, very unique Charlestonian appeal. As you know, the shop will be renamed the Parlor, evocative of a parlor. We've got a private room that will look like an old.
In the spirit of the parlor, you could host intellectual events there.
Yes.
Debates and stuff.
And there's a room with, fireplace in the back and all that kind of good stuff that looks like an old garage or an old horse, caretaker's cottage, that's the word. And I've actually had people down that have those. Am I getting the look right? And they're like, yeah, you're getting this. It feels just like somebody's house. You wouldn't know it. And so that is, again, that's going to be very limited. But what I hope is spur more of it. And so more of these type of places. Maybe they don't have to be as exclusive, but spur like, oh, you can do this in Charleston. You can take that Charlestonian.
It's infectious.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can apply it to a bunch of different things. And so that's really not. I always categorize it as a shared office space with a cigar lounge attached, because I did that. The impetus was one of my customers who, let's say, would make a sailor blush, and I figured when he talked, and I love him. He's a dear friend of mine, and I did it so that he could have a place and it would be soundproof, and he wouldn't work against the aesthetic in the front.
Yeah.
And so, we always laugh about it. He was in last night, and he's an absolute beauty. He's like a brother to me. Now.
Yeah.
But he, and it's kind of cool because he gets what he wants, and now I get what I want, and so it's been fun, and it's using it again. And that's that's the Hong Konger in me. Hong Kongers would say that they would see something like that, and before I moved there, I wouldn't have. Okay, they wouldn't look at that as a problem, like, how can I fix him? They would say, how can I fix him? How can I make it right for him and yet right for me? And so they would see, oh, we're using that space back there. It's been used for storage. It's dead space. Let's get some economic benefit, but also and a customer benefit as well, and a branding benefit. And
Yeah.
so that's the part where I bring that part of my life with me here, and hope that I weave this into who I am as well, and that I just add to it. My family and I, again, we're so happy to be here. We just want to add to the community. We have no desire to fundamental change.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Loving it. I think it's, I've talked to Soho House was trying to do a concept here, which I felt, yeah, we need members clubs downtown. There's a
Right.
lot more. There's a lot of very sophisticated guys moving here, operating here. A lot of cool, older local people that have been here forever. And I feel like there's a huge need for some of these kind of social clubs.
Yes.
But Soho, I don't know if it was the city or Soho themselves canceled the development. But I think there's a huge hunger for some of these kind of membership club type things,
Right.
having a more sophisticated, exclusive vibe to them that are very, Charleston based, Charleston aesthetic vibe,
Right.
values. And hopefully this can kind of inspire something like that and
yeah,
show that, hey, people are hungry for this.
Yes, I do, and truth be told, that is one of the underlying things, is that I do want to create or be a part of, I should say, that building of that culture. I mean, that's something I really enjoyed over there. That you can have intimate conversations with people in a sophisticated setting, and not worry about being called this or that, as long as people are respectful. And I think people are really hungering for that here. And it's not, to me, a status thing. It will be, because it's not cheap, but it's more of a non-status status, in the sense that it's just who we are. You want to come on? We got space for you? Great. That's great. We're not excluding anybody just for the sake of exclusion. It's all about, share our values. Cool. It's and that's what I think is really missing here. And I think if you look at it like a brand, the Charleston brand, it's like any brand. You got to have your Bugatti Veyron, and that inspires and trickles down to Lamborghini, Bentley, all those people that fall under that umbrella, Audi, VW, and so on and so on. You've got to say, this is my North Star, this is what I want, this is the ideal, and people are drawn to that. I'm a firm believer in that. You get what you attract, not what you want.
100%. So you've been in this industry for about 3 years now, cut your
Right.
teeth on it. I'm sure you've got some fun stories of like getting everything going and figuring out the process along the way. What do some of the younger guys that are interested in getting, learning about cigars, find cigars, like what's a good starting point for them to kind of experience this culture? And
How does one import a Cuban without getting caught?
You can go. You don't need to get caught. You are legally allowed to bring
Mexico.
certain amount of Cubans in, but of course that entails travel. People do. There are Facebook groups. There are ways of legally importing them. The issue is quality and whether or not they're real. So that's one of the things you have to do. So I would, having a Cuban is a great thing when it happens. If I'm starting out, I'm not going to force it, and I'm not really going to care about what, I got to have my Cuban, and that's, then I'm like a made man in the mafia, in the cigar mafia. It doesn't need to be that way. For young folks that are starting out, they first usually grab on to the concept that they can be with the adults. And that was funny. One of the things that when we first made the changes in the shop is we had a couple of fellas that came in that went there when it was a very different place, and they came in and they basically said, look around, like, I gotta take my hat. I'm sure you want us to take our hats off, and I'm like, yes, I do. That was a moment. One of the changes where we really took a sea change. Now, taking a hat off is is not like monumental, but in a sense it was. My customers were telling me, and yet then these guys are sitting around and they're just looking at each other, and I could hear them, and they're saying, wow, must be what adults are. It must feel like to be an adult. And classical music is playing, lights are dim, candles are up, and the other guy looks at each other and he says, you know what, this is not so bad. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole thing about cigar culture. So cigars are great, and get into them, start easy. Don't try everything. Don't worry about finding certain flavor profiles. A lot of folks, if you're looking on YouTube for reviews, they're going to find flavor profiles of pepperoni pizza and sheetrock in cigars, and it's just not there. And so the thing is to not overthink it. The real thing that I want to see younger people get into it is more for the culture of being around men, of men bonding, primarily men. I mean, we do get women in too, and but men, they have a need to talk because they're less general. I'm probably going to get shot for this. They're less talkative than women.
Yeah.
Less free to share, their feelings. So while the shop of the design of the shop is geared towards getting couples in, because I think that introduces a cool dynamic, a date night sort of thing. That sort of Humphrey Bogart, Casablanca feel to it, somewhat, where you're getting lots of interesting people in. That's the main impetus. But I would say just below that is helping younger guys come in and understanding, my idea of what it is to be a gentleman. A gentleman is more in your head, not necessarily just the kind of clothes you wear. That usually follows. It's funny. You start to see young men say to themselves, they'll say to me, "Oh, next time I'll dress up a little bit." I'm not asking them to, but we're attracting them to, you can be a little bit better. You don't have to have an F-bomb come out of your mouth every 3 seconds, unless you're my guy, whose name I won't mention, but and I love dearly. But it's that's the fun part about it. So for young people, I would just go to shops that you trust, that are not trying to sell you the latest and greatest, that are willing to take you for a ride. I'm sorry, not in the bad way, a ride. Take you on a journey. Does that sound better?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's probably take you on a journey where
Men conspiring in shadowy, smoky rooms.
Yes. So dreams of being deep state operatives, on the right side of the deep state. No, seriously, it is more about. So when our approach, and the fellows that work with me, I tell them, look, you got to treat everybody that walks in is treated like your grandmother, assuming you like your grandmother. You are going to talk to them with deference. You're not going to push them. You're not going to pull the wool over their eyes. You're not going to try to oversell them. When you have that approach, it's magical. It's really magical because you're not really selling, you're introducing. And then the transaction, and my lounge is fairly pricey, becomes a totally voluntary one, right? And so they want it. They want a part of that. You're not forcing them. You're not twisting their arm. And you're teaching them to be contemplative. I don't have to solve this problem in a day. I don't have to get to Valhalla of cigars. And frequently I won't. I have people, what's your most expensive cigar? Okay, how often do you smoke? I don't smoke that often. Well, it's like, I would say the phrase my wife always says, it's like playing Mozart to a pig. The pig's not even going to understand what you're doing, so you're not going to be able to appreciate it. So, or Mozart to a cow, you're not going to get any more milk out of it, and they won't appreciate it. So, of course, I don't say that to the person, but if they're buying it, say, for a wedding, I would tell them, like, look, you don't need to get these super duper cigars. You can if you want. I'm more than willing to. I'm not going to say don't buy it, but I want you as a customer. I want a relationship with you, that over time, that you can take this journey and you can sort of just appreciate cigars like you would appreciate scotch or whiskey or whatever. So, but So the issue with cigars is you have a small community that smokes them that really knows their stuff, and they're looking for the latest and greatest. No different than a car,
Wine or art
a
or anything.
metalhead. I mean, a motorhead or a wine guy or wine geek or anything like that. Then but the vast majority of the people, know a little bit about them, and they just want a relaxing experience that they haven't found. We are getting so many people that come in that say, we knew this place was here, but we didn't know it was like this. And so, that's the fun part, to get those sort of people that are, what they're coming in for is the experience first. We're building the relationship based on that, not on the
consumer aspect.
consumer aspect.
If I may,
Yeah.
what you are selling is not. There is obviously the consumer aspect.
Yes.
However, what that generates from that and what your space creates is something you're speaking of, contemplative sort of area.
Yes.
So that is what this generates, something that is outside the bounds, a gratuitous aspect to it.
Right.
Shall I say?
Exactly. Yeah. We're a business. We're a high end. We're moving towards that high end experience. It is what it is, but it's much more fun when I'm very blessed that I can take my experiences and shape them into a product offering that is essentially a viewpoint on living, a la Ralph Lauren. When he designs a car, a watch or something like that, he says, I had this Bugatti Type 57A. I love the lines of it. I use this in my watches. You'll see some of the design cues here and there. I took inspiration from it, loved how it made me feel. Welcome to my world. He's not even selling you it. He's just telling you about what drew him into it. And hopefully, if you like it, they'll be drawn to it too.
Ralph Lauren's one of your favorite out of the designers, and
yes, without a doubt. I mean, he is a big influence on the way I've done things. Now, I've done about 15 shops in Hong Kong, our own shops. I've done a couple restaurants over there, and he's a massive influence because he's a guy whose real name is Ralph Lipschitz. He changed his name to Ralph Lauren, and he's very middle class upbringing. Middle class upbringing then, though, you still had the values, all over America that you had in the 30s and 40s. But he was able to craft an idea of how he wanted to live. And now he is the epitome of gentility. And even in the UK, he's basically he's taken everything that's English and Northeast and Southeast.
He's a Jewish guy from New York that's created the wasp aesthetic.
Yes, exactly. And so but yet it's not a contrived thing. He's not trying to be a wasp.
Yeah.
He's saying those things I like, and that's the life I want to live. The big house and this and that, but it's secondary to the family, the type of family I want. And if you've ever seen his kids or heard them talk, they could be Charlestonians, and I mean it in the very best way. They're gracious, they're gentle, they're just put together in a sense mentally. They're humble. He is now an adjective. That's very Ralph Lauren.
Yeah.
So you imagine that
he sells
kind.
a lifestyle and a
Yeah.
vision,
Yes.
and a beautiful aesthetic.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Yes.
And you go into you said the flagship store in Hong Kong. I've been to their main store in Aspen and in
Right.
New York. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I've been to the Fifth Avenue one. Yeah, and it's
how was the one you talked about the bar at the one in Hong Kong?
so
Was
the one in Hong Kong is nowhere near the level. They did have a massive flagship store in Causeway Bay, about a mile along the Strip, and it was huge, but that just wasn't getting a lot of traction. But they have one in the center, CBD, Central Business District of Hong Kong, where all the old brands are, and it's a place called the Landmark. The Landmark is it's a couple of blocks, or it's a one city block that has got 4 corner sections and then a middle mall, and it's the only place on earth where every single luxury brand exists. And fortunately, my wife and I were able to have a store there, because the way we ran our stores, they thought we were a big brand. if somebody wanted something that we didn't have, my wife would put them in a taxi with an employee and take them over to a competitor's. I mean, this was unheard of in Hong Kong. And so we were very fortunate. Our store was in between Joel Robuchon, very famous French restaurant, and also the original Mandarin Oriental. So when we were just so blessed to be we were in the place where the only place on earth where every single luxury brand, every major luxury brand, and they're all flagship stores. And so we fortunately had a small space and we didn't have to pay a king's ransom like they did. But yeah, so he's got a three-story, $15 million flagship in this place in every detail. And what really inspired me was, of course, it's just inspired by the brand altogether. But what inspired me was on the second floor, they have a bar where, and I asked the GM, how many people come in here? Maybe 1%. Maybe 1%. And this is a place where you want a steak, they're going to get you steak. And it's it's going to be all gratis. And they have a fitting room. And I said, well, how many people use this fitting room? And he said, 1% of the 1%. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it out. One of the times I bought something, I had to have it fitted. I said, let's go back there. I go back there and I'm changing and I'm looking and they're probably wondering what took me so long to put on a pair of pants. But I was looking at every corner. It was moving everything to see the fit and finish. And I could not believe the detail. There was nothing. There was not a loose carpet thread. There was not a nail that wasn't tacked in. There was not a plaster that cracked anywhere. And I was like, wow, if this guy's if he can create an organization where the focus on quality is so thorough that 1% of the 1% of his of his customers are never even going to see it. That's the kind of that's what I want.
What with the some of the new businesses and money that's moving to Charleston, have you heard any scuttlebutt about some of the luxury brands or new clothing stores or flagship stores that are going to move to the area in the next couple of years?
Other than the Four Seasons, I do think I'm sure some of the other European brands are going to be coming in too. So once you get one of them in, they all seem to pretty much follow. And I think most of them are owned by LVMH. The French guy Arnaud or Bernard, whatever his name is. So they'll all be coming because he owns them all. So I think for the Four Seasons coming in, it's going to be fabulous.
Well, they're doing they're not just doing a hotel. They're also doing a condo. You can buy condos there.
Right.
They're doing a whole condo thing. It looks unbelievable.
Yeah, and so the beauty of that, and I think what's good for the city, and it's good for the customer, is that companies like that have a bench strength. They can pull somebody from Istanbul, Mexico City, Singapore, whatever they want to get the desired feel for it. And their bench strength is amazing. So you go to Four Seasons around the world. Our shop wasn't too far it was a 2-minute walk across the mall from the Four Seasons. And so you would, their just level of service is just beyond comparison. Everything's perfect. They are so disciplined in the way they do things without being contrived or cold. It's a fascinating thing because they're different than places, say, like the Peninsula Hotel in Hong Kong. There's also Peninsula in Beverly Hills. That's owned by. My wife and I rented a shop from the owner of those properties, and they're very Hong Kong guy, and they have a very sort of Asian feel to them, whereas the Four Seasons can seem to be a changed shape in essence to whatever it is and sort of blend in. And so that's why I'm excited, tying back to the earlier conversation about blending in. What do I want to do? I'm excited when that sort of thing happens because they will sort of come in and put a structure in of service that will have the patina of Charleston, but it'll feel like an international level of service. And on a very micro level, that's what I'm trying to do. That's
Absolutely.
What I'm trying to do.
Well, to wrap it up, what are you excited to see happen in Charleston over the next 5 to 10 years? Like what trends or where do you see the city going? What are you excited about?
Well,
where it's going?
I am happy to see. I think I'm happy to see what I would say is the maturation of the city in terms of. Of course, it's the oldest city, but in terms of like getting its mojo back. And I do think part of that is the recent Republican election. I've met the former mayor. He seems like a nice fella, but definitely taking the city, in my opinion, away from its roots of service, its roots of excellence. I think I'm hopeful that the new mayor will do that. And I think the people, because this is a more purpley kind of area than other parts of the state, I think the people are saying, yeah, we've had enough of that. Yeah, we get it. Everybody's included. Do your thing. But that's not the exception should not be the focus. It should be welcome, just like anybody else. And so that's where you start to, there's a look at the overall zeitgeist of the city. And so that's what I see is happening. And I think it happens slowly. I think we're one part of that.
Make Charleston exceptional again.
Yeah, exactly. Make Charleston exceptional again. And to me, I would say in a very base way, I want to see Charleston get its swagger back. Just in maybe the same way I wanted to see Hong Kong in its heyday. Man, there wasn't a place that could touch it. It was. I mean, the hair is up on my arms. When the first time I walked there, I'm like, what's that smell? That's money. And people living life, and people going for it. People want to see what's the story of Rocky. You can be a complete, 80 IQ, but they want to see somebody go for the brass ring. We're a lot better off, metaphorically speaking, than Rocky, and people want to see people go for the brass ring of service, of experience, not of creating an Alaskan cigar experience in the middle of Charleston, but that taking that cultural regional identity and taking it to the end and saying, and sort of posting your flag and saying, yes, this is who we are. We don't have to be, warts and all. This is who we are, and
a little chauvinism never hurt anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Some pride in, we're Charleston. But it's not like we're Charleston, like, screw everybody else. But we're Charleston, that quiet confidence. And that's my hope for it. That's my hope for anything I'm associated to deliver a quiet confidence about, what it is you want to do in your life, whatever that may be. And I'm so grateful for Charleston, meeting friends like you that have encouraged me all the way, because change is not easy, as you know. And look at President Trump. I mean, look at what love him or hate him, he is the Ajax for America. He's woken people up, and to see people are now awake. And I think we touched on this yesterday. I think people were sleeping for a while, and they need to become awake and aware and in the moment of what they're doing, and not just sort of, be passive about it. Absolutely. Be a part of the community. Be a part of it, and you don't have to lead a march. Just go to your office, go to your place of business, and just be the best damn person you can be, and show a healthy civic pride in what's happening. And I think you'd be surprised at the local level, if you do that, it has a groundswell.
It's contagious.
Yes.
Well, thanks again, Gary.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. This is awesome.
My pleasure.
Love to have you back again soon.
Mine,
This is wonderful.
Let's do it off.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure.